There are moments in history where nothing dramatic happens. No collapse, no revolution, no clear breaking point, just a quiet shift. A change so gradual that the people living through it don't recognize it as change at all. They adjust, and by the time anyone notices what's different, the old standard already feels unrealistic. That's how normalization works, not by force, but by familiarity. There are things that used to make people stop, not argue, not negotiate, just stop. They were signals, warnings, lines that didn't need explanation. If someone crossed them, you didn't need a debate. You had clarity. Now those same signals are everywhere, and somehow they barely register. Not because people don't see them, but because they've been taught, slowly and repeatedly, that seeing them doesn't change anything. At some point, red flags didn't disappear. They were reinterpreted. What used to mean this isn't right slowly turned into this is just how things are now. And that shift didn't happen randomly. It followed patterns we'd seen before. Historically, standards rise during periods of stability and fall during periods of uncertainty. When people feel secure, they can afford to be selective. When they feel uncertain, they adapt. After major disruptions like wars, economic shifts, and technological revolutions, societies tend to loosen standards, not because values vanish, but because survival requires flexibility. You can see this throughout history. After the Industrial Revolution, work standards changed. After world wars, family structures shifted. After economic crashes, expectations adjusted. But what's different now is that the disruption never ends. There is no recovery period. Technology accelerates change faster than humans can psychologically integrate it. And when adaptation becomes permanent, standards don't rebound, they dissolve. Psychologically, humans are not built for constant recalibration. We rely on stable reference points to make sense of behavior. What's acceptable, what's expected, what's too much, and what's not enough. When those reference points disappear, people don't suddenly become wiser. They become more tolerant, not out of kindness, but out of exhaustion. This is where erosion begins. It starts with understanding. Understanding someone's stress, their circumstances, the system they're navigating. Understanding is healthy, but when understanding replaces accountability, standards weaken. And once standards weaken, behavior shifts to meet the new minimum. Take effort. Historically, effort has always been a signal. In relationships, in work, in communities, effort indicated investment. You showed up because it mattered. You followed through because your word mattered. You were present because presence mattered. For most of human history, effort was visible. You couldn't fake it. Now effort is abstract. Messages replace meetings. Reactions replace conversations. Availability replaces intention. And because effort is less visible, it becomes easier to excuse its absence. Psychologically, humans avoid conflict by rationalizing disappointment. Instead of confronting lack of effort, we explain it. They're busy. They're overwhelmed. They didn't mean it. Those explanations reduce immediate discomfort, but over time they train us to expect less. Eventually, effort stops being the baseline and becomes a pleasant surprise. And when effort becomes optional, connection weakens. Attention followed the same trajectory. In pre-digital societies, attention was unavoidable. If someone spoke, you listened. If you ignored them, it was intentional. Attention was a social contract. Now, attention is fragmented by design. Algorithms compete for it. Notifications interrupted. Speed replaces depth. Psychologically, the brain adapts by shortening focus. Not because people choose to be distracted, but because sustained attention becomes cognitively expensive. So instead of resisting distraction, society normalizes it. We say this is just how things are now. But normalization doesn't remove the cost, it transfers it. When attention disappears, intimacy weakens. When intimacy weakens, relationships become transactional. When relationships become transactional, commitment feels unnecessary, which leads to responsibility. Historically, responsibility was survival. Families depended on it. Communities depended on it. Reputation depended on it. If you failed to show up, consequences followed. Now responsibility is abstract. Systems absorb consequences. Institutions buffer failure. Technology delays accountability. And culturally, Responsibility is avoidance becomes self-care. Non-commitment becomes freedom. Instability becomes flexibility. Psychologically, this appeals to a deep fear, being trapped. In uncertain environments, humans prioritize optionality. Keeping doors open feels safer than choosing one. But optionality comes at a cost. When nothing is chosen, nothing is built. And when nothing is built, meaning erodes. This is where standards truly disappear. Not because people reject them, but because they become too heavy to maintain alone. It's hard to hold standards when no one else seems to share them. Social proof matters. Humans calibrate behavior by observing others. If inconsistency is common, it feels acceptable. If avoidance is widespread, it feels reasonable. If low effort is normal, high effort feels risky. So people self-censor. They lower expectations internally before voicing them externally. They say, maybe I'm asking too much. This is a psychological defense mechanism. Lowering expectations protects against disappointment, but it also rewires desire. Over time, people stop knowing what they actually want. They confuse adaptability with maturity. But adaptability without anchors leads to drift. Historically, cultures relied on shared norms to reduce psychological load. You didn't need to negotiate everything. You knew what was expected. Now, everything is negotiable. And negotiation requires energy. Boundaries require justification. Standards require explanation. Expectations require defense. And constantly defending your standards is exhausting. So people stop. They let things slide. They choose peace over clarity. But peace without clarity becomes numbness. This is why so many people feel vaguely dissatisfied without a clear cause. Nothing is overtly wrong. It's just thinner, less depth, less reliability, less meaning. Because meaning emerges from commitment, effort, attention, and responsibility. When those weaken, life feels lighter, but also emptier. This isn't a moral failure. It's a systemic one, a society optimized for speed, convenience, and optionality will inevitably weaken standards, not because people are worse, but because resistance requires stability. And stability is rare in a constantly shifting environment. The danger isn't that standards disappeared, it's that people forgot they existed. When red flags become normal, people lose calibration. They don't know what's reasonable anymore. And without calibration, instincts fade. Everything becomes contextual. Everything becomes subjective. Everything becomes temporary. And that creates quiet anxiety. Not panic, not fear. Just the sense that nothing is solid. Maybe this is progress. Maybe it's adaptation. Maybe it's the price of modern life. Or maybe it's what happens when psychological coping mechanisms quietly replace shared standards. Because normalization doesn't mean something is healthy. It just means enough people stopped resisting. And once resistance stops, change completes itself. This isn't a warning about the future. It's an observation about the present. Because this isn't coming. It's already here.